You are listening to the Prosperous Law Podcast. Learn how to reduce stress, have more time, and make more money. Come on in.
I'm Greg McCollum, and I built a 7-figure criminal defense law firm. I formed Prosperous Law to show criminal defense law firm owners who are desperate for success how to grow from under $200,000 to $1 million and beyond. Hi, Greg McCollum here with another edition of Prosperous Law Podcast. At Prosperous Law Coaching, what we do is we help criminal defense lawyers, criminal defense law firm owners, whether they're solos or whether they have a small law firm. We help them learn how to grow their business so that they have less stress, more free time, and make more money. We help them and show them how that they can take what I call a solo law practice or a small law, I won't call it a law firm, a small law practice, and turn it into a functioning business. And a business is something, without going too deep into the definition, a business is something that you can walk away from for a period of time and it continues to run. And it runs based on the people, the policies, the procedures, the metrics, where everything is operating. If you think about somebody who owns you may know somebody that owns a McDonald's or a couple of restaurants like that, or maybe they own a franchise like a Subway or something, or maybe they have any kind of brick and mortar kind of business and they're successful at it, then they're not in there every day flipping burgers. The people come in and open the business, they get everything ready, they start serving customers, they take care of the property, and then they close, and that happens on a daily schedule. If you have a law firm business, then the same thing happens. In a true law firm business where you are not actively handling the cases, and if you want to do cases, you can do the cases, and I could do probably a whole nother podcast or talk about that. But if you want a business, then you have a business if it runs without you. In other words, people don't have to stop and come into your office and ask you questions about things. They don't need you really, because you set them up in a system that flows and succeeds without you. I go to my office now. I'm in the office at least probably, just call it 10, 12 hours a week. And when I'm there, people don't ask me questions. No one ever comes to my office and says, Greg, how do I handle this? And that's because they've been trained and given the power and the ability to make decisions. Now, I'm not absent. They meet with me. We have regularly scheduled meetings where we all go in there, and whatever questions or problems they have, they hold to the meeting. If something is occurring which is out of the ordinary, something that they do need some help or guidance on, and my office manager, Kelly, can't help them with it, then they'll ask to meet with me, and then I'll meet with them. But I don't meet with them 15 minutes from now. There's a calendar, there's a schedule, and so they'll ask Kelly, can you set up a meeting so I can meet with Greg? And it seems kind of artificial because I'm there walking up and down the hall, and they're there working. But the other thing that happens is, and it may almost seem like rude, but we don't talk to each other. And I used to always think it was dumb or rude to send somebody an email or even text somebody. I try not to text because I think it's so disruptive. But I've learned that if I'm sitting in my office and I need somebody to do something, but mostly that just comes down to my office manager, my firm administrator, and the client care coordinator who sits at the front, and part of her duties is the reception area, and also she handles the calendar. So it's a lot less disruptive for me to send her an email and copy my office administrator for something that needs to be done in the future, rather than for me to walk up to the front desk, interrupt her, tell her what I want, break her train of thought. So we don't do that. And we're pretty good at it. And it wasn't always that way. It used to be when I would walk in the office, as soon as I walked in the door, I was accosted because everybody had an issue, everybody had a problem. But really in that context, there's a part of this that you learn is that they're just giving me the problem, okay? And there's techniques and stuff I could teach you or show you how to handle that I didn't invent. They're things that I learned. But it's completely different. And what we're talking about here is having a business, a law firm business that runs basically without you, so to speak. Now, the issue, though, is what I'm describing is almost like a form of like business law firm utopia. And there's a chasm or a gulf that you have to cross to get from having a chaotic law practice where you're the bottleneck and you're the answer for everything, you're the solution to every problem, to having a law firm business which is calm and quiet and humming along without you. And how do you get from over here to over here? How do you cross over that? That's the problem. That's where the storms are. That's where the problems are. And most of those problems are not in the mechanical steps on how to cross that gap. They really come down to your mindset. And this is kind of a continuation of the last podcast I did where I talked about this. And the title or the topic today is to really grow your business, you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. You have to learn how to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that doesn't seem very appealing. And you could ask me and say, Greg, I want to have a better life. I want to have a calmer life. I want to have more free time. I want to have less stress. I want to have less worry. I want to make more money. I don't want to learn to live in discomfort. And that's the issue. And that's the problem that most all of us have is we want comfort, not discomfort. And it's something that I've gone through and continue to go through to some extent, but I had to learn that. And I can't remember the first person that said it to me is that you've got to become comfortable being uncomfortable. And what happens over time is that what made me extremely uncomfortable starts to lessen over a long period of time, where the discomfort, two things. One, I'm just getting used to it. I'm getting used to the discomfort and the uncertainty. And the other part is that as I solve problems, there's less making me uncomfortable. But it's a key thing. And like I said in the last podcast, 93% of people do not own a business being defined as a company that pays wages to employees. And so if you don't want to go into discomfort and learn how to cope with that and deal with that, then don't start a business. Don't grow your law firm. Go to work for someone else, because working for somebody else is a lot more comfortable, because your problems, as big as you think they are, is just doing your job. And you do your job well enough. You keep your job. Hopefully you get a raise. You get some time off. And you can be pretty comfortable. Depends on your working conditions and all of that. But to really grow your small law practice into a law firm business, you have to learn how to become comfortable being uncomfortable. And the irony of it is that when you talk to, and they're different, I would say they're different categories of people different people in your life. You have the doubters, you have the friends, in quotation marks, who are not really friends. They're colleagues, they're acquaintances, maybe they're competitors. There are people out there, though they seem friendly to you, they would really be happy if you failed. Don't celebrate your success. They seem to say that they're happy, but they're not happy. And you need to become aware of that everybody out there doesn't want to see you succeed. And so for me, how much am I going to expose myself to those people? Why would I be in the realm with those people at all? If they're really happy if I fail, then do I really want them in my life? And you go to a bar association meeting and everybody seems friendly enough, but you have to think about that, and you have to be aware of that. And so you have to make some decisions about how much time are you going to spend with people. And there's more to it than that, because misery loves company. And so if somebody's saying, well, you can't believe what happened to me, and they tell this terrible story, and then the next person says to them, well, that's nothing. This was worse that happened to me. And so you got the misery loving company, and everybody kind of bonds in that. The reason they're bonding and the reason they're comfortable with each other is because everybody's miserable and nobody's doing well. It's just kind of a bitch session and a complaint session, and that's okay for everybody. If you sat there and said, whoa, wow, my law firm grew 30% last year, and we brought in 2 or 3 new employees, and our marketing plan is working great. Are they happy about that? If they're not, then you have to look at what are they doing in your life. And if you have to spend time with them, you have to spend time with them. But at least understand about being at least guarded and private at some level. And this may be something that you're well aware of. And I think that one of the characteristics of me is I was always very open and really fairly naive with people. And so I would share things with them, but it was a one-way street. And so for me, it's been something where I've had to adjust my natural inclination to understand that. Now, the other group of people you have are people in your friends and family who they do love you, and part of loving you comes with they do not want you to be in pain. They want you to be comfortable. They don't want you to be uncomfortable. They want you to be happy and, quote, succeed, okay, whatever that means, but not to have pain and problems. And so they try to protect you. And so if you say you're going to expand your business or you're going to take on another liability or another obligation, out of good intentions, they question it and they talk about it and say, well, are you sure you really want to do that? Do you think that's a good idea? Now, they're working against you. They're working against your dream. They're working against your prosperous future. But they don't have bad intentions. They have good intentions because they don't want to see you fail. They don't want to see you in pain. And you think about it, if you have children and your children are going to go try to do something hard and difficult, and you see all the pitfalls, you see all the problems, and you discourage them, you're doing it with the best of intentions. So they don't want you to be uncomfortable. They don't want to see you in pain. And so if you start a business, the irony of it is that they're right. They're right. If you go try to do something bigger, you are going to be in pain. If they don't want you to try something because you're going to fail, guess what? They are right. You will You will fail. You will fail. You won't fail at the entire endeavor. You won't fail in the end, but certain things you do, certain things you try to do are not going to work. And this is contrary to everything we're taught when we go to school and we grow up, is don't fail. Failure is bad. You don't want to be a failure. And the only way to not be a failure is to not try anything. If you don't try to do anything, you're not going to fail. The other thing is, as lawyers, because of our legal education, we have it even worse because, you say, you're thinking about, well, I want to open a satellite office, or I want to bring in another person, or I want to start a new marketing plan. And you're taught as a lawyer, what? Never ask a question you don't know the answer to. So if you apply that on doing something new to grow your business, it's in complete conflict with what you were taught was right and true. Well, if you open another office, you can't possibly know what's going to happen until you do it. And so the people that are trying to protect you unwittingly, they're holding you back. They're anchors, they're doubters, they're people that are there to protect you and stop you. In some ways, too, and I've thought about this a little bit, you need to find something that you truly care about. If it's a practice area and you do family law to pay the bills, maybe you do some civil litigation because you have to, pay your rent and pay your staff. But what you really love to do is criminal defense, then if you're able to do criminal defense, it's easier to keep doing it because you're happy doing it. If you're doing stuff that you cannot stand to do, it's unlikely you're going to be really good at it, and it's unlikely you're going to be comfortable doing it. And I've said this before, and I'm not the first person that said this, but building a business, building a law firm business is hard enough, and it needs to be something. And even if you could start any business in any area, non-law, whatever, it has to be more than a good idea. It has to be something that you're passionate about, because otherwise you'll just quit. And I want to talk a little bit about motivation and what motivates you. I know that a lot of people are motivated by proving the doubters wrong. They have a pain or something inside them that really drives them because they're going to show them. And this could be somebody they're related to. It could be somebody that is in the community that said they couldn't do it. And we all know this, and we've heard stories about people who are incredibly motivated by somebody telling them they cannot do it. And I think that probably applies a lot to a lot of the mindset of lawyers because of the competition of you cannot win this case or you cannot get this result, and in the strength of saying, well, I'll show them. For me, it's not really that. I don't really want to go put it in somebody's face and say, look what I did. That's not something, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I think that motivation can be extremely helpful and really gives a lot of people the fuel to go back and tell somebody in their life, whether it's a parent or a brother or a former business partner or whoever, like, see, look, I did it. For whatever reason, that's really not been my motivation. And I remember specifically when I had started really getting serious about growing my law firm back in 2013, and it took me, I think I got right to $1 million in about the year before COVID, like 2019. I could say I broke $1 million, but it was like 980, something like that, 980,000. And probably that is $1 million. It's just missing some numbers. But in my mind, it wasn't that. And even though that may be an artificial demarcation, honestly, in my mind, I didn't do it. So then COVID hit, and like everybody else, I was afraid, I was fearful, I was spending money on marketing, and I dialed a lot of it back because nobody knew what was going to happen. I was able to keep my employees, I kept my advertising contracts, but I scaled things back to a certain extent. And so my business went down. I can't remember the exact number, but it was back down in like the 800s. And then the following year, I hit that mystical number. And that was when at the end of the year, when I looked at my books, I was over $1 million. I can't remember, about 80,000 or something like that, but I was over it. And I remember, and it might have actually been a little higher than that, because I remember in the fall when I was going in my books and looking at it, I saw that we had hit the number. Now, this was something that I had been striving for about 7.5 years, 8 years. And it was the goal. It was the unattainable goal that I could hit 7 figures in revenue doing only criminal defense. And I remember when I hit it, now this is something I've been trying to do for 8 years. And it's what I thought about every day. And it was when I first started it, I could not imagine successfully doing it. And then I remember when I hit it, I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell, I was in a marriage that was ending. I was in a bad marriage, and we had all kinds of problems, a lot of which, surrounded money and success and things like that. And, my wife at the time had worked in my law firm up to a point. I mean, she knew the goal. When I started growing and going to coaching programs and things, initially she went with me, but it was just ultimately too uncomfortable for her. So she reached a point where she started trying to stop me, to keep me safe and to keep herself safe. So when I hit it, and this was somebody, our marriage was ending, but this was somebody that I had spent a lot of time with, and I didn't tell her. I didn't call my father and tell him. I didn't call my mother and tell her. I didn't tell my brother, my sister, and on and on and on. I certainly didn't tell the lawyers that I knew. I didn't tell anybody. I think I took a screenshot of it and sent it to one friend of mine who was somebody who was in a similar situation where she was doing the same thing and growing her law firm. And so I sent it to her and I shared it with her. But it was really more of an inward and singular accomplishment. I certainly didn't put it on social media. I didn't broadcast it. I didn't announce it. And I don't know if that's right or wrong, but I had it with the doubters. I had it with the people who were holding me back. And so there was no reason in my mind to tell them anything. And so what it also tells me about it is that my motivation was really true and accurate. My motivation was really within me. And since then, I've created new goals and new benchmarks and new things to hit. And I feel really good about it. And I know lawyers that have, 8-figure firms and that sort of thing. And so in some respects, my success and hitting my great goal seems kind of tiny. but it's not tiny for me. And I remember at the time things that I went through to get there. And I remember basically that I just didn't quit because I had every reason to quit. And when I was writing my book, and there was some copy that somebody that I work with that was helping me, and they were talking about growing a business and building a business. And they said, you know, this is easy. And, you know, I edited that out because I'm not going to tell you that it's easy. That's not true. It's not easy. It's fairly simple. It's fairly mechanical, but it's far from easy. And you see things online where people are trying to get you to sign up for things or buy things and say how you can easily, you know, triple your revenue in 6 months and stuff like that. There are people that these things can be done, and I know people who have done that, and I know people who have coached that and taught that. But it's possible. But even the people that have trained other people to do it and grow at a very rapid pace, they don't say it's easy. They say you have to do the work and you can move faster because the time period of 12 months or whatever it is really just a man-made artificial time. So you can move through that time faster, but it's not easy. And I remember I think the things that stand out for me the most are the cash crunches and the payroll crashes, because that's the time that I felt the most powerless. And if you look at what is so terrible about having a cash crunch, what's so terrible about not making payroll, and I think it's just ultimately for me that these people have trusted me, these people have bought into my mission, these people have come to work for me. They have families, they have bills, they have car payments, and they trust me to pay them. And if I cannot pay them, then they misplaced their trust in me. And so that's extremely difficult for me. And I can remember three cash crunches. I remember the first one. I just come back from my morning jog. It was early in the morning, probably before 7 a.m., and standing on the front porch stretching and thinking it was the worst feeling in the world. And I thought back about it later. I said, you know, that could have been a great time to quit, because this proves I don't know what I'm doing. This proves that my idea won't work. And I lived through it. There were people that worked for me that did not get paid because I hadn't adjusted and learned how to solve some of these problems. I could talk about that if we had more time. But one of the things that happened is that my best team member, my best paralegal, quit and left. And after that, as I learned about A players and C players and D players, what I discovered was she was a D player. And her leaving was one of the best things that ever happened in my law firm, because on the surface, as a D player is, they have the talent and the ability, but they're undermining everything. And they're like destroying the firm from the inside out. And that's another topic. I talked about D players. So that's what happened, is that I couldn't pay people, and they got paid the next week. It's not like they didn't get paid. They just had to wait 3 or 4 days, and I figured it out. But these are the things that you deal with. And if you're going to build your law firm into a business, I'm just being honest here, it's worth it. I can tell you it's worth it. My life is completely different since I'm on the other side of that chasm, that stretch of barren land you have to go through. But you could do it. Maybe this doesn't sound that encouraging, but I don't mean it that way. I just mean you have to brace yourself. You have to commit. You have to determine you're not going to let the doubters stop you, and you're going to overcome obstacles because you're going to learn to live in solutions and understand that no matter what happens and how bad it is, it's not going to kill you, and you don't have to let it stop you. You can keep going. You can move through it. So I hope this was helpful. I'll see you next time.
If you want to know more, go to prosperatlaw.com. We show criminal defense law firm owners how to reduce stress, have more free time, and make more money. Thanks for listening.